Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an amazing episode of the You're Not Done Yet podcast, where your purpose is just moments away, and I am here to help you get there. You guys, we have our first guest of 2025. And when I say that I am so excited to deep into conversation and dig into conversation with this young lady right here, I'm just so excited. So, Dominique, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, we'll get right into the episode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dominique Mack, and I am so glad to be with you from Brunswick, Georgia, my hometown. I
Oh,
am a beautiful, messy, and magical Black girl. I always say messy and magical because I believe that we get to show up in our authenticity and being who we are. And some days that's magical and beautiful, and we have all of our stuff together. And then some days I'm a mess. I get to not have everything all put together, and that's who I am.
love it. So just a quick backstory, you guys. I met Dominique last year in Austin, Texas. We were at a convening together, and we just clicked on being Black women in a space where there's not a lot of Black women in, which is philanthropy and especially in the niche of environmental health and justice. And so we were talking, and Dominique was just sharing that she went to Florida State, and y'all know that I'm a diehard Rattler. So I'm like, baby, you were right across the tracks, okay?
That's
And
right.
also just doing some homework, some work in my hometown, Gaston County. So we just definitely just
Yep.
connected on all of those things and just stayed in touch. And I wanted to talk to Dominique today about her company, Community RX. So, Dominique, when did the idea come about? When did the light bulb turn on and say, I need to be doing this type of work or getting into this work?
So it actually started in 2019. It was February, so we got an anniversary, right? What happened was is that I was the community service director at a nonprofit here on the coast of Georgia, and I had had this idea for a very long time that I wanted to do some sort of women's group, and I didn't know if I wanted to do like a pajama party or I wanted to, gather women at the bookstore. I remember years before that I had sent out a call on my social media and I said I just want to have a space where men like me could gather and we can talk about everything from self esteem to relationships that we have been going through. And I worked at this company, and the year before that, another one of my colleagues, her name is Miss Claire. I always have to shout her out. She was a part of my staff there at Community Action, and we had this idea that we would do a women's empowerment program. And during that women's empowerment program, women would come to session. We designed it to be for 9 months, and folks were in this really small town, kind of small like Gaston County,
Yeah.
and it was a town called Pembroke, Georgia. And in Pembroke, most of the folks that were coming in seeking services at Community Action were Black, were from, low income circumstances. A lot of times they were just getting back into society, re entering from being incarcerated. Some of them had their children taken away from them. Some of them were struggling to pay their rent, barely having a high school education. And we wanted to figure out a way that we could, yes, provide our case management services for them, but also how did we show them that they were not alone in the things that they were going through and give them a circle of women just like them that could help them along their journey. So, and to keep them in their case management service so they can complete their goals, complete their plans. And we worked on everything from grief and loss to, how to a parenting plan, conflict resolution. We brought in folks from our weatherization department. So how could we lower their energy costs inside of their home? And we provided childcare for them. We provided stipends for them. We did field trips for them. And it was just amazing to see their lives turn around. And that first class, and I'm telling you all of this on purpose. In that first class of women, we had, I believe it may have been 9 women to graduate from that program. And so, and then we held it for year after year. I believe that is still going on. And that was in 2017 that we started that program. And then so we get to 2019 and I go and I'm leading a session on grief and loss in Richmond Hill, which is like another section of the same county. And so I go to this session, and the alchemy of the room was so thick. Like, and so women were dealing with some really serious losses, from losing a husband, losing a father. A father was on life support in the room, and you could feel the spirit move in the room from leading this session. And women was having breakthroughs. And I went to home that night. I drove an hour and a half back home to Brunswick. And I remember I could not sleep. And this idea came back to me that I wanted to do a women's retreat. And so my background is in social work and social services. And so all of my friends at that time have usually a license in social work, have trauma-informed care background. And in 7 months, I put together a retreat with my friends for 40 women from all across the United States, came from California to Florida to Georgia, and we celebrated, we gathered, we had just significant breakthroughs over 3 days in St. Simon's. And if you know anything about St. Simon's Island, Georgia, it is a place that has a deep history of Black folks prospering. But over the last couple of years, Black folks have been pushed out, and has become one of the most wealthiest zip codes. And so most of the Black folks there now are workers. So they're working the hotel industry there.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, an experience like this would never be available to them. I remember going that first night, and some of the staff were setting up, and they said, "What's happening here?" Like, they never seen Black women here in this space. And
Yeah.
specifically, I wanted us to be able to come there, because we should be allowed to go anywhere.
Anywhere. That's right.
Anywhere. So, and that last day of the retreat, we did this ancestry ceremony with my godmother. She led it. And I remember it felt like birthing a baby physically. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to go back to my job, because this is it for me. This is what I'm supposed to do with my life.
Yeah.
And I had about $500 left from this. And when I say I did this retreat on a shoestring budget,
Come on.
I mean, literally, I'm working at a nonprofit, so you can imagine I'm not making a lot of money. But
Yeah.
I took, half of my check one week and literally put down a deposit at the inn at Sea Island. And I big ups to the folks that was working there at that time, who
Yeah.
worked with me. And I had to get a hotel block in order to oh my
Yeah. The
goodness.
whole
But
thing. Yeah. The
every
whole thing.
every day I worked to make that retreat successful, and it
Yes.
was. And the success for me is not in the number of people that came, it was in the breakthroughs that happened in these folks' life. And after that last day, all I could do was start a website with the money that I had left over.
Hey.
And this was 2019. And I
Yeah.
said, okay, I thought I was done. I thought that
Yeah.
that's all I was supposed to do. I was just answering the call of what I believed that God had told me to do.
Yeah.
And after that, I had to pivot, because the next year we couldn't hold another retreat, even though people were asking for it,
Right.
because we was in the pandemic.
Right. And who
And
was coming
so
during the pandemic?
he was coming during the pandemic. And
Yeah.
so that summer of 2020, I held online sessions. And during those online sessions, I built out a 12-week program where I came up with my guiding principles now that I follow in all of my work.
Yeah.
And that is grounding the work and in practice. And grounding is about becoming present. So we do some sort of grounding exercise, whether that's a meditation,
Mhm.
a journaling exercise, breath work, tapping, humming. We just try to get present and to allow ourselves to just be in the space. And then we go into the work. So that's whatever topic that we're focused in for that day. And we've worked on everything from fear, how to have a healthy relationship with your body, how to have a healthy relationship with other people, how to own your power and advocate for yourself, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in your family, whether it's in the community. How do you do that? And so I've taken all the best of what I do and put it into practice. So that's the third guiding principle. because
Yeah.
I believe that what is it to gain all this knowledge and skills, but then you don't know how to
You
use
don't
it?
use it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we practice right there in the room. And so now I do that through Community RX, but I do it in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
And how I do that is now my primary focus is not just on women, it is on the whole community. Because
Yeah.
what I realize is that if I just focused on one population, so many other folks are going to be left behind. And
Yes.
what I believe is that although that I am called to women specifically in helping them, I can bring other practitioners along the way who are able to speak to men, speak to children,
Yes.
and we have to look at the whole family.
Yes.
You know, when I say whole family, I mean our community specifically is our families, it's the towns that we work in, it is our friends, it is the schools that we're at, it's the government. So community looks differently everywhere.
Yeah.
And we're all in it. And also the first community is always within yourself.
Yeah.
And I often tell people, I am not teaching you anything. What I'm doing is I'm bringing out the stuff that is already inside of you.
Yes.
I am a facilitator.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so my work now looks like teaching for nonprofits and corporations and government entities on personal and professional development.
Yeah.
Whether I'm helping leaders, I am talking about how to have healthy boundaries in the workplace. I am talking about how to care for yourself while you're navigating these different seasons that we are in.
Yeah.
And I'm also doing community engagement, right? I work with different nonprofits and corporations and government entities to engage with their community in a community centered way. And how do I also do that in a healing way, right? How do I provide safe spaces? So when you come to a workshop of mine, it's never just a workshop. You're never just hearing information. I'm always going to tell you and help you see how you can take care of yourself better in the process. And then I also plan, I do strategic planning with folks. So that is one layer of the business. And honestly, that's where I make most of my money.
Yeah.
That's where I make most of my money through the consulting side of my business. And then we also have workshops and retreats that we're going to start planning again. I'm also, remember I said that I led with the call. hmm So
Yeah.
I lead with the call. So when spirit tell me that that's what I need to do, then that's how I do it. Yeah, that's how I do it. And so I have workbooks and I have different things that I believe that will tangibly help folks along the way. So I keep expanding the vision. That's what last year was about. I hit six figures, but along with my job and my professional business. This year, I got a huge contract with a federal contract to do community engagement for folks here in the Golden Isles area to talk about climate and how do we do that equitably and hearing straight from community about how they want to see change happen. And then I'm also doing trainings with nonprofits in San Francisco and some other areas with AmeriCorps. And this year, I will be speaking at the Funders Network, the conference. I will be speaking about healing practices for the compassionate leader as a part of Community RX in Baltimore in March. Yeah. I hope you come to my session.
Go.
Let's
One thing
go.
that I wanted to definitely touch on is one, when you said that, when you feel like the spirit is leading you to do something, you do it with no hesitation.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
right.
want to say, how did you get to that point? Right? Because we know that purpose is a part of life. We're all called to do something, right? And as believers, we do get in that state where it's like, okay, God, I hear you, but I don't have the resources. And I hear you, but it's like I don't have the support I feel like I'm supposed to have. So, how did you get into that mindset of not being hesitant, but keeping to moving forward? Like, if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be obedient. So, how did you get to that to that point, to that mindset.
Well, I saw what happens when you're not obedient,
Hello.
you know,
Hello.
and it means that when I don't listen to my own intuition, it's always some sort of harm to myself, and it can be for my detriment or the detriment of those that surround me. And I also got really clear about what's my responsibility and what's not. And
Mm,
so, and try not to wear myself out
yes.
as much. There are certain instances where I do have to go really hard, and then I break really hard too.
Yeah.
And so, how I got to the point of being able to listen to that is really by getting still. And when I say getting still, meaning keeping to ground myself in the moment and to write it out. And when things start waking me up in the middle of the night, I start writing it down.
Mm,
And then when I get that type of clarity, it's
yeah.
easier to move. And oftentimes I have not had the resources in the past. And I'm gonna tell you, sometimes I've made some really bad decisions
We all
as
do.
well. And I lost a lot of money. Like in 2020, I moved, with the spirit, I thought. But also that you gotta get the good right people around you.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I had some folks around me who was not the best influence on me, and I made some bad decisions, and I spent money that uh, I realize now was not good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't regret it, but
Yeah.
that's $5,000 I could have had because I spent more money on that one event
Yeah.
during a pandemic than I did on the retreat ever.
Come on. Come
Yeah.
on.
And it was beautiful, and it was really helpful for the people that came. And it was only a small number of people, mostly my friends from Miami came actually.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. But I realized, and I believe that it was also for me as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like that moment, it was called In the Midnight Hour. That was the event, and it was
Yeah.
really it was like a Terry service. And when I say service, I mean we may never use the word God or spirit or any of those things, but we know that it's there.
Hello.
And so, yes. And so I would say that sometimes the calls on our life will have you out here looking crazy
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
have you looking uncomfortable because oftentimes what's in the spirit don't match the reality.
The reality of it. Yes.
But when you get a vision and you have a drive in order to move, you do it. And honestly, I learned really early on to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell you early on, there have been so many moments of my life from the time that I was 14 years old and I had the audacity to move to Miami where I didn't know anybody
Yeah.
and I've started my life over again so many times.
Mm.
And I can just point to you so many instances where I took risks,
Risk. Yeah.
and I didn't always have safety nets and supports. Like I'm that person who will quit a job with no job. I've done that like 3 times
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
life. And there are certain things that I won't ever do again.
Yeah. Because you don't learn. You don't learn from it.
I done learned because even when spirit does tell you to do stuff, it's also the right timing of things. And so the kind of stress and mental, physical, and emotional turmoil that I went through, I don't wish that on anybody. So I move with spirit, but I do it more strategically now.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is too, and moving with the spirit is also saying, okay, if this is what you're saying, show it to me in my word. Give me confirmation through somebody or something to let me know that this is like the right path. And I think for me, hesitancy for me is like, are you sure? Right? But realizing that as I'm growing and I'm walking in my faith is that, God has already gone before you and he's laid the path, right? He's made the path for you to walk down, but you just have to have faith and walk in it. And I feel like that's what taking risk is, right? Risk is saying that, okay, I'm gonna jump out here on faith and I'm gonna try it. If it works out, great. Even if it doesn't work out, okay, maybe it wasn't my time, or maybe there's a different way that I'm gonna have to get there this way just isn't it. And realizing that risks are a part of life. You can't say that you want to grow and you want to elevate if you don't want to. There is no way to expand if you don't want to take risks, because you're just going to be sitting in the same place, just looking
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Everybody else is moving forward and doing what they're supposed to do, and then you're kind of like stuck, because God is like, okay, well, I'm giving you the strategy, I'm telling you what to do, but
Hmm.
because it doesn't look the way that you feel like it should look, you're taken back, which is saying low key, like, okay, so you don't trust me enough to step out there. But let's not think about all the things that I've done for you to get to this point, right? If I've done all of that to get you here, why am I not going to help you at the next step, or
Yeah.
to the next trajectory, right? And I would ask you too, what do you feel like has been some challenges in your work, right? So I know creating a curriculum, and then you're creating these safe spaces, right? And you're facilitating in a way to where you're trying to brighten that light, right? Like you're trying to open up that safe space for them. You're trying to create a space that that a lot of them don't have. So how has that been? What are the challenges that you feel like have been your way since you said, yes, God, I'm going to do this. Yes, I'm going to follow in my purpose. But it's tough.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I
tough.
would tell you I've had a different number of life circumstances. And so you hear that I changed my business from being all about women and focusing on Black women to focusing on whole community, right? And so that didn't happen by circumstance. I started the business in 2019, well, which I didn't know it was a business at the time.
Yeah.
But that same year, a month after I did the first retreat, my grandfather died. And then a year after that, a year and one day after that, my grandmother died. And then 2020, that's when all of these different things started happening. So my first challenge was I was suffering with a lot of grief. And I was also during that time went through a divorce. I moved again all over again. And then a few months after my grandmother died, I decided I was gonna quit my job. And then and then I went 7 months of no job. And so there was no business. There was no I was doing trainings here and there, but it was not consistent. So I would say the first was the grief, and then the physical, mental, emotional impacts of what was happening with that was at the same time. And then the struggle with consistently showing up for my business, because I couldn't show up for myself. I couldn't
Yeah.
be good to myself
Yeah.
at that time. So those were some of the first. And then I also struggled with figuring out how to consistently make money for my business as well. And meaning just focusing in on what I do really well and pitching that out to folks often, right? And not being ashamed to every time I do a training, I need to go ahead and pitch myself up again with the
Yeah.
same organization and with other folks that are in that room. And so
Yeah.
every training that I do now, since I rebranded as Community RX last year, I
Yeah.
always keep pitching myself again.
Yeah.
And I've gotten some small grants along the way. I've gotten two $500 grants, but $500 at this point in life is nothing. And
Yeah.
so the other struggle that I've had with is capital, because I would love to have a retreat when Spirit tells me to do it,
To
but
do it.
I'm not doing it again in the way that I did it before. I'm not going to bootstrap it. And I also don't believe that my community should have to pay for it in the same way. Yes, there will be a cost associated with it, but I'm not going to work myself to death in order to do it. So it has to be sponsored by corporations. And I'm sorry about that. And so I had it on Do Not Disturb. Okay. Anywho, you can edit this out. And so what I've realized is that having access to capital as a Black woman is also a very big struggle. But will that stop me? Because I have all the visions and all the plans, and I know how to execute them very well
Very well. Yeah.
for myself. And even figuring out what type of merchandise and products I wanted to have was also a big deal, because last year I said, oh, I'm going to do t-shirts, I'm going to do crop tops, I'm going to do journals. And you know what? That didn't feel like authentic to who I am. And also, I'm in this space now of minimalism and sustainability, and that it don't feel good to put more things out there to the ozone and treating Mama Earth just badly. So I'm not doing any of those things. I'm not creating the bucket hats or any of that. Yes, it's cute, whatever, but it doesn't do anything for me, and I don't think that it's going to add value to my community. So I'm focused in on the digital workbooks that I've already created, the sound affirmations that I've created, and creating those really great digital products, and the physical products that I will create, doing those really well, that is something that they're constantly going back to. It's something that they're actually using. I don't want to create a mug that's going to sit there. And there's no diss to anybody who creates those kind of things, but that is just not authentic to who Community RX is, and it's not authentic to Dominique. And so I want to make things that have meaning.
Think that's kind of where I am too, because trust me, I had the whole, oh, I could do t-shirts for the podcast. I could do da 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 da. But then it's like, be honest with yourself. Do you have the bandwidth to do that? Do you have the capacity to do all of that? You're a mom, you work, you're doing this, and on top of all these other things. So why are you trying to put yourself in a space that you're probably not even meant to be in? Because that's not where God has called you to. And I love how you keep using the word authentic or authenticity, because I feel like in the work that we do, that's how we show up. We have no choice but to show up as our real, raw, authentic selves. And one thing that is said in our field is that bring your whole self to it. We want to know all of you. We want to see all of you. And I feel like in the work that you're doing, that's what it is. Like you're bringing your true, authentic self, and you are inspiring or expecting other people to do the same thing. And even though showing up authentic looks different in every aspect for everyone, but at the end of the day, doing healing work, doing community work, doing God's work is all about being authentic. And I would say, what was a moment where your authenticity like really showed up and shined for you when they was like, okay, yeah, Dom, this is it right here. Like,
Mm.
this is it. This is it.
I would say that I learned to be myself very early. I learned when I was 14 and 15 years old, because I was a black girl in a bigger body, and I had to figure out how to love myself, because there was nobody around me reaffirming that for me. And so I had to figure out how was I going to do that for myself. And so I started looking in the mirror really as a teenager and telling myself, you are gorgeous, you are beautiful. I started adorning myself, figuring out how to dress for myself, and figuring out ways that made me feel really good. And so that is how I first started having to walk in my own authenticity as a person, because even though I'm a black woman, oftentimes somebody might not see me when they see me as a black woman, because my hair is different, my skin color is different. And not knowing who my father was, I always kind of felt like I wasn't enough and I didn't belong in spaces of blackness or whiteness. So trying to figure that out about who I am, I've always had to do the self-work. And so those are the moments that I realize how to tap into my authenticity, and that's just who I am. I'm always going to be that, and I realized that that's what made me special. That's what made me unique, because nobody can be a better Dominique than I can. And so I try to love on her every day, repeat. And there are moments where I don't like something still. That's natural. That's
Yeah.
natural, because I also remember, being a black girl and going to predominantly white schools and trying to change how I talk, how I walk, how I wore my hair. Like I've gone through all of those different moments too. Where I straightened my hair so much my hair didn't curl anymore. You know, and that was still at 23, 24 years old when I was working at the sheriff's office, trying to fit in and figure out, how I could, be like everyone else. And then I said, you know what? If I was like everybody else, then what value am I adding when I'm like everybody else?
Hello. Hello. Like, what makes me different? What makes me stand out if I'm trying to be like everybody else?
Yeah. And that is what attracts us to one another.
Yes.
If we're not being authentically who we are, we have
Yes.
no intimacy.
No.
And intimacy is how we connect with one another. And
Yes.
that is the true power of how I create safe space.
Yes.
I
Yes.
create safe space by walking in my own power and knowing who I am as a person. And
Yes.
anybody that comes into your presence, you know when they're being them real selves and when they're not. I can always tell when people are putting on.
Yes. Yes. Cause something about it just don't sit right. And that's why that discernment come from. It's like feeling what you're
Yeah.
laying down. I'm
Yeah.
not picking it up.
And as black people, oftentimes we have to put on some sort of added exterior for protection for ourselves. And to also, and it's important that we gatekeep certain things about ourselves. That way, because people are always trying to feel that magic. They're trying to get it for themselves. But you can't recreate magic, baby girl. You can't do it.
No, and it's that
Yeah.
saying that is in you, not on you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And realizing that showing up as your authentic self, it takes you a long way. Because knowing that every time Dominique show up, oh, I'm gonna get 100% real raw, real. You know what I'm saying? Every time
Yeah.
Andrea show up, I'm gonna get 100% real raw, real, knowing that you know the gift that you have, the power that you have, and I just want to see you tap into your power, right? I want to see you tap
That's
into your
right.
light, right? I want to see you connect with yourself on a different level to where if anybody
Mm-hmm.
got something to say about you, you know that that don't even exist. Like that's what you putting on me. I ain't putting that on me. You putting
Check the
that on me.
source. I
You
always
know
say
what I'm
check the
saying?
source.
You putting that on me. But realizing that tapping into your power is allowing you to help other people tap into their power. I feel like that's amazing because we don't have that enough, and especially as black women, because we're so used to wearing all these hats, and pouring into ourselves is the last thing that we do. you know Pouring into our households, we do that all the time, but intentionally pouring into the household, not making sure that it's running smooth, but intentionally pouring into the household.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are y'all good on all bases? Not just because you fed,
Yeah.
you got a house, a house to live in, clothes on your back, but how are you? And realizing how do we piece that all together. And that's just what community is helping each other along the way in spaces where we're weak, right? Where we don't have people who are creating those safe spaces for us to be comfortable. So, my last question to you is, do you feel like you are authentically and genuinely walking in your purpose?
Yes. Full answer. Full
Full
stop.
answer, period. That's it. But it's funny how some people are still in that mode of trying to figure out like what their purpose is. So I would ask, do you have any advice or any tips for the people who are still trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing? What is my purpose here?
One of my great friends and mentors in this life is Janelle Holland. She's a licensed clinical social worker and just beautiful human being. She once told me that there are going to be many things that you are good at and have gifts and talents for, but you may not do all of those things. Yeah. And so I believe that we should all find out what we're really good at. Think about when you were a child. Campbell, who has a podcast called Dreams and Drive, she always asks people about what did you love to do as you were when you were a child.
Yeah.
And when I think about what I did when I was a child, I was always writing, always reading, always curious and exploring. I loved history. These are still the things that I love to this day.
Yeah.
Remember those things that you really love to do. What was those things that really brought you joy? When you wake up in the morning, what are some of those first things you're thinking about? What makes that feeling come inside of your stomach, in your belly? And I'm gonna tell you, one day because it's just been happening for me in this season of my life, is now my call don't scare me anymore. I remember I would get these urges in the pits of my stomach where I would get nervous and have anxiety about what I was supposed to do. But now it's just like a muscle. I've practiced it. I've done it so many times that it subsides. And I'm 36 years old now. I'm just now getting to that point of have walked in my purpose for so long now that I can do it with an easiness and a calmness. And I had been waiting for this feeling. Honestly, it makes me emotional, you know. But I took the time to self-investigate. I journal a lot, and I have really good friends around me who pour into me and affirm for me the things that they see inside of me. And I thought about those things I went back as a child. So I would say those three things I would do. And I have this list that I wrote about 12 years ago, where I wrote down all the things that I really loved and enjoyed. And it was fashion, it was Black history, it was women, it was cooking. And I look at that list now, and
Yeah,
those are all the things that I'm doing. So
that you're
I got
doing.
I got really clear about my vision, Andrea.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's the thing, getting clear about your vision, right? Because like you said, a lot of us are good at a lot of different things, right? But it's normally going to be those one or two, three things that really stick that we are really able to do and enjoy doing it. So I will also say too, to add to you, is that don't be afraid to try different things, right? Don't be afraid to
Yep.
try, because honestly, it's the one thing that you may not think that's going to stick that's probably going to stick, because you are so good at it. You have the drive, you have the passion, and you have the God-given talent to do it. So I'm, yes, plus one, plus one, plus one, plus one, plus one, plus one. Because yeah, as a child, I love to talk. So proof is in the pudding. Here we are. Here we go.
Oh, now.
Right, we're here. We're here. But I just want to say, Dominique, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today to talk about healing, talk about community, talk about purpose. I just enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you did too. And I
Yeah.
pray everyone that listens to this will get something out of it. But before we get out of here, Dominique, can you please tell the people where to find you if they want to work with you, if they want to talk to you even more? Where can they find
Yep. So you can find me on my website, communityrxconsult.com, or you can email me, Dominique at communityrxconsult.com. I am not on social media, and that is on purpose. You have to, know me, be referred by me to get to know who I am. So, but I would love if you would come book a consult with me, talk, get clear about what you would like to do, bring me in for trainings. I love to do things virtually and online. I am available and flexible and would love to work with you.
Well, thank you again so much, Dominique, for stopping by the podcast today. So, with that being said, make sure you're following the podcast at You're Not Done Yet Pod, and me, your host, that is Andrea B on Instagram. And I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.